Hi, this is Andy Scarborough with CrownWorks. It is so good to be back. Today, I want to share a little bit about the beauty of boundaries. Now, whether this is in your personal life or with clients, boundaries are a beautiful thing. No matter who we're saying that magic word no to, it actually is the key to freedom. So when we think about setting healthy boundaries, a lot of times we think of like big hard no's or breakups with friends or firing a client or something really dramatic. But I think that's part of the reason why we're so hesitant to set them in the first place. The beautiful thing about boundaries is that it's really about whatever the self-honoring choice is for you at that moment. You know, I might have plans to go see a friend that I feel really obligated to keep. And as it comes time, I'm exhausted or, am looking at maybe skipping dinner to make the movie time or something like that because I don't want to let them down. And that's the point where we can really check in and see where the root of that wanting is coming from. And if the wanting is coming from a place of not disappointing someone or wanting to accommodate or anything really that feels like it includes the word should. And that's the kicker, right? Whatever the situation is, whomever is in question, if there's part of your self-talk that is including the word should, that is the indicator that there is a boundary that is being slipped up on. It's amazing societally how we should all over ourselves. Undoing the shoulds feels like it can be a lifelong process, but it doesn't have to be, because that's the thing. Those threads of habit and obligation often will pull more than you think is attached. What I mean by that is if you say no to one thing out of a self-honoring choice because you need to sleep or you'd rather have a nice dinner than rush and eat popcorn at a movie, or you just don't want to. Saying no in those moments are the opportunities that we have to start undoing that should culture deep within ourselves. Now, there's a lot of that should culture that's really deeply rooted, whether it's what our parents told us was polite or our religion growing up told us what was appropriate, or our fear is telling us we can't do without. We get back to, I feel like I circle back to this in almost every video, but that approval addiction is a really real thing, and it permeates into so many aspects of our lives. A recent example that I had in myself of a boundary setting was with a client. And I'm one of those, I've built my career on coming in early and staying late. And part of that, because my clients know I will show up for them if they have a need, is part of why we have such a loyal relationship. However, there comes a point where it's almost self-sacrificial. And if I'm coming in early for one client and already offered to stay late for another, I'm actually not being of very good service to that last client. And that was the point in question. And I remember talking with someone about it and just saying, gosh, I can't, I was imagining how exhausted my body would be at the end of the day and how I knew I didn't have enough time to sleep in the next morning to physically recover from what was looking to be a 13 or 14 hour day. And I wanted to accommodate this client so much. I love her. And, at this point in my career, I feel really lucky. I truly adore all of my clients. So saying no to them is not something that's fun for me or any kind of a power trip at all. And as I was talking to this friend about this dilemma, she really noticed the conflict in my face when I said, I can't do it. And I feel terrible. And she offered me a bit of discernment on that. She said, it's not that you can't. You can. And the trick is that you've been making many of these decisions based on what you're physically able to do. And the truth is, it's not that you can't, it's that you're not willing. And that felt so exposed to me, you know, the difference between can't and not willing. But I realized that she was right, that I had been making a lot of my decisions based on what I was physically able to do. And I felt like if I was physically able to do it, then I should say yes. And it's so easy to trip up into that whole place of, well, if I'm grateful for all of this, then I have to keep saying yes because I don't want to complain about it and not have it. But the truth is, like, that refinement is key to keeping it and keeping it going. So the difference between I can't, I won't, and I'm not willing to were pretty big differences for me. And part of it was the difference in how it felt for me on the inside. I'm not willing to felt awful. And at this point in my spiritual work, I kind of know that when it feels awful, it probably means that that's exactly what I should be doing. So in the example of wanting to accommodate that client, really looking at the I'm not willing to part gave me the heebie-jeebies. It made me feel like I was ungrateful or that I didn't value the relationship that I had with that client. And so I decided, like a lot of other things that I've been trying in my life lately, that I was just gonna run an experiment and see what happened if I explained to her my whole journey to I'm not willing to. So I explained to the client, if I come in early for you, I'm gonna be really physically tapped for the client that I'm already staying late for. And I'm just not willing to shortchange her service and give her a subpar version of me. And she was fine. She totally got it. In fact, I think she really respected my honesty about it, and we got her booked at another time and it was fine. And before we hung up, she said to me, I really appreciate that because I know if I were your last client, you would do the same for me. So the thing about that I'm not willing to statement is it really makes you own what works for you and what doesn't without deflecting like a physical capability. Because the tricky thing about that is if you start saying, oh, I can't, then suddenly, like energetically, you can wind up manifesting that. If you've ever had the experience of saying, oh no, I can't go out, I'm sick, when you really weren't, you just wanted to stay in, and then all of a sudden you're home and you're sick. That can happen. So it's actually a lot cleaner energetically on a lot of levels just to tell the truth. But that requires a level of bravery in standing up for what works for you and what doesn't. It's so easy to try to come up with some excuse about physical capability or being otherwise obligated or some way that we feel like is going to spare the other person the truth of us just not wanting to. And it's okay to just not want to. We are so quick, especially as hairdressers, to throw away our lunch break or our evening with family or friends in order to accommodate because we're so afraid of letting someone down, when the person that we're most consistently letting down is ourselves. So the beautiful thing about setting up healthy boundaries is that if we do it consistently enough, the people in our lives know that when they're getting our time or our energy, it's because we really, really want to give it. You're never resentful for taking that evening off instead of going to the party that you feel bad about missing, or you're actually doing more to honor the relationships with your clients by saying that you're not willing to stay late or come in early because you value dinner with your kids, or you value that early morning client you have the next day. Like some of the other things that we've talked about, a move towards self-care like this, like accepting a compliment, can feel really strange at first, and it takes a little bit of practice. So don't be disconcerted if you feel a little guilty the first time you say, I'm not willing to do that. If you've been a yes person for most of your life, to start saying no feels a little strange and often has some emotional charge to it. For a long time, y'all, I'll be real honest, for a long time, the only way I would say no is if I were ground into the dirt and totally exhausted and often really resentful and angry. And then the no kind of came with a fuck you, how dare you ask. And undoing that, it was a really interesting shift, because when I started to say no from a place of wanting to take care of myself first, all of the heat was gone from it. And there was a real sweetness to the response that I got, rather than it being a combative, fight with my mom because I couldn't spend an extra day visiting her, or a friend miffed because I couldn't make it to her birthday party. There was no implied hostility. The implication was only that I'm putting myself first. When you've been in a habit of accommodating and making things work for people for a long time, they often will have a hard time relating to you when you're no longer fulfilling that exact purpose for them. And this is not anybody's fault. This is just the dynamic that everybody has been playing along with, right? That was the music that was playing, and that's the dance steps everybody was rolling to. And now here you are going and changing the music. So whether there's some of your friends, even some of your family, and definitely, as again in the beauty industry, some of our clients may not be willing to make that change with us. And this is where I'm really going to ask you to be brave and extra self-honoring. Let them go. Let them go. If it takes you grinding yourself into the ground to prove how much you love someone or what you're willing to do for them, then that's not necessarily a person that's healthy to even have in your life. And that's where those boundaries are extra, extra beautiful, because self-loving boundaries become a really fine-tuned filter about the kind of people that you want in your life, in your social circle, and most definitely in your chair. There are some people that just want somebody that they can call on a whim, who will come in on their day off and do their hair, probably for a discount. And that's okay, because that dynamic has been working for them, and there is somebody out there who's not in the point yet of the evolution that you are, that you're willing to start saying exactly what you're willing to do. And for that person, because you're not dancing to their beat anymore, the relationship probably isn't going to play out. And there may be a friend who gets really miffed that you won't rally and go out with them. And that's okay too, because that friend probably isn't the one who's going to be in service to that highest version of yourself. They're not loving you the way you're starting to. And that's where the money is. There's an element of faith in this, and there's a big element of trust and surrender. Oh, even as I say that, it's funny, as I do these videos, every week I try to share about something that's really present for me. And this boundary setting, definitely through the holiday season, but as I continue to grow and evolve my clientele, is something that's really present for me. And I'm not waiting to get actually sick anymore before I tell someone that I'm not willing to overextend myself. And it feels really good. But there's also a little bit of empty space that opens up there on my books, in my social calendar. And I'm okay with that. It's sort of like cleaning out your closet or getting rid of old furniture. And there are some days that can feel really long and scary and empty when you're looking at an empty house or an empty closet or an empty appointment book. But I'm telling you, the people that are going to come in are going to value you as much as you do. So the best bet is to start valuing yourself. And the easiest way to start are with some really loving no's. Because the beautiful thing about boundaries is the more you value yourself, your time, and your worth, the more you're going to attract people into your space, into your life, and into your chair. They're going to feel the same way about you. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at crown_works.